Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode I'm discussing the 2023 supernatural horror Evil Dead Rise, as directed by Cronin, who now takes their turn at churning up some Evil Dead madness in what is now the 5th entry into the overall Evil Dead franchise. This time around, we now move away from the fabled cabin in the woods setting. We take a vacation. We travel to a depleted, dilapidated, mostly vacant tower block in Los Angeles. I love Los Angeles. Soon to be levelled to make way for a new development. Following an earthquake, a sub-level opens up in the basement of the complex, revealing a long-since sealed vault containing an ominous-looking book and a handful of phonographic recordings. The book finds its way into the hands of a teenager, yes, Danny, as played by Morgan Davies, who thinks it's definitely a curiosity and promptly takes it up to his room for a bit of light bedtime reading. And what was that book that Danny had so intrigued, you might ask? Well, bound in flesh, written in blood, it couldn't be none other than the Notorum de Monto, the Book of the Dead. And luckily for Danny and his family, some thoughtful priest back in 1923 thought it was a good idea to translate some of the book's passages onto vinyl. Needless to say, absolute carnage ensues when Danny listens to the aforementioned recordings and unleashes a terror upon his family and the housing block, the likes of which catch them completely unawares. Once again, set on an unrelenting mission to savour the souls of those it takes, a demon set free by the book torments and terrorises the inhabitants of the tower block with a sickening and twisted resolve, leaving really only one question left once again. Who will survive this night of terror, and who indeed will be dead by dawn? So, welcome to a new nightmare. An absolute vision of an Evil Dead movie that I think more than captures the spirit and essence of the franchise, yet taking us on a new, twisted and distinctly more vicious journey that never holds back. I have been anticipating this film for so long, it feels like forever. The trailer itself was a complete nightmare of its own, but yet I have been kind of apprehensive at the same time. The movie seemed so far remote from any of the others in the franchise. It was kind of difficult to see how it might actually connect to the others, if indeed they had ever planned for it to do so. So I was never actually sure whether or not this was going to be a sequel or a remake. What I would say is that, without spoiling anything, I would suggest it's likened to another chapter, perhaps, set within the overall Evil Dead universe. It's not a direct sequel to any of the other installments, but it's not a remake. But it exists. Oh yes, it does at that, in a very surprising and deliciously played out mangled web of a way, which opens up a whole new world of possibilities and kind of allowed the story not only to kind of tap into everything that made the Evil Dead what it is today, but also kind of still bring us something new, wholly unexpected and totally deranged. As the movie sets off, we become trapped on one floor of a tower block, so you are kind of left wondering, where is this that could actually take it? Options do seem somewhat limited, and indeed, hosting it in a tower block seems like we've kind of taken a step back to the age of the horror sequel, where such sequels would often take refuge. But believe me when I say this has total fun with that concept and never once holds back, simply escalating from each horror to another. Too often we've had too much of a wait between entries in this franchise, too much, yet each has been a thing to savour in its own right, and this more than keeps up the series' traditions. The way the movie kind of plays with our expectations is frighteningly bold and takes a few distinctly different directions. The way the camera work and shots are set up makes everything feel so intimate, which just ups the level of horror that actually unfolds. That and this movie goes where others fear to tread, even the Evil Dead series. Children. Not often do they feature so prominently in a horror film, yet this actually brings us a cast, including newcomer Nell Fisher, who plays Cassie, in her feature film debut that's simply amazing, and together, you know, they cash in on some of the film's greatest moments, especially Cassie with her soon-to-be trademarked Stephanie, one of the franchise's newest iconic weapons. It is one of the only ones in the franchise that kind of really makes you care for the characters on such a personal elevation. There's a real level of emotion that sets kind of, well, it's set up to kind of make that first act of possession especially brutal, and everything thereafter just simply delectably carnal and barbarous. The film brings us a believable family unit that kind of captures our hearts from the start, adding much to our unsuspecting terror. Alyssa Sutherland, who plays the film's main antagonist, Ellie, is simply amazing. If you haven't seen the trailers, I mean, if you have, you'll know who I mean, but if you haven't seen the trailers, go watch the trailers if you haven't seen the film, but you'll know instantly who I mean. And the movie's true focus throughout, and it is an enviable hook, you know? Her transition is terrifyingly personal and more than cuts a nerve. But when she's in full-on demon mode, it's a performance to kind of really delight in. She makes the role her own and gives it everything. And she looks like she's relishing every minute. Totally immersed in that character and bring us a side of the demon that's truly sadistic and fiendishly ruthless. They don't mess with the formula once again. This is certainly Evil Dead to its core. But Cronin gives it their own spin and morbid twist that works so delectably well. I love the way that each film in this series has actually so far really kind of tried to add their own stamp, yet still willing themselves to exist in the same universe. And this truly pulls this off, being no exception to the rule. And blood? Expect elevators of the stuff. There's a healthy mix of gore, direct horror, and dark, really dark humour that sets itself up for some memorable moments and throwbacks to other iconic moments in the franchise, and in places really, really going to town with the ideas. I was made up with this film throughout. The only real disappointing element was the fact that the demon themselves didn't really ever get that creative in the same kind of ways as we'd been seeing previously. The ending notwithstanding. The conversation seemed quite repetitive at times, but nonetheless, I can't complain. That their level of cunning, deceit, and arrogant depravity just downright more than made up for any shortcomings in this department. Overall, Evil Dead Rise is a gnarly, nasty movie with a real mean streak and totally indulges itself in the ideas and ideals of the franchise, toying with them and spitting them right back out at us in a brilliantly graphic detail. Mixing horror and treacherously dark humour, the movie hits all of the right spots and certainly delivers the goods with an awesome mix of characters, a brilliant family dynamic, dark-edged comedy, and a sick and twisted centre, making great use of its surroundings. Sutherland certainly gives us a gruesomely devilish performance that's set up so brilliantly with a level of emotional involvement not often and not really seen in the franchise to date, which makes everything that transpires all the more terrifying and more than personal. And indeed, of my greatest fears, I needn't have worried. This film connects to the overall franchise in one of the most delicious ways possible, looking back at one of the series' most brilliantly slapstick moments, yet kind of bringing it forward into menacing focus for both fans of modern horror and the classic installments alike. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.